We'll be starting here in about 2 minutes. We'll be starting here in about. I don't want her to. Good morning. Welcome to the 85th edition. I don't know what edition this is. The Steel Guys, January 25th, 11 a.m. Central Time. Today, we're here to have an interactive discussion about about India as an emerging economy, an emerging powerhouse in the economic world development here. We are monitoring this. Let me make sure I got that going on here. Yep, there's the India. I'm monitoring the chats from the, let me make sure that I got my volume going here. Yep, that's sounding good on LinkedIn. And I think we're a little behind on the, for some reason, I'm a little behind on there we go. So, yep, good on YouTube, good on LinkedIn. I think we're good on Zoom as well. Can't really tell on the Zoom part of it here, but we do have one or two guests. Tell me where you're logging in from here. Love to know where you're logging in from. We'll be monitoring the chats. Again, today's topic is going to be India, an emerging powerhouse. Let's see here. Got the chat up. I also have the chat up in the Zoom call. So anyway, let me bring in Scott Glenn here, the other steel guy here. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Jim. And hello, everybody who's out there joining us. We appreciate you joining in for this conversation, and hopefully we can have some interactive communication.
Perfect. Yes, some interactive. Again, the chat's the important part here. And again, I did hear you. I think the sound's better. We've had some sound issues where you're a little quieter than I was, and I think we fixed that this week. So hopefully we're getting some good quality video and audio out there, and watching the chat so we can get some interactive discussion. But anyway, let's start off by saying, India, it's the world's largest democracy, and it's in a rapidly merging economic powerhouse in the global economy here. It's attracting attention from investors and global businesses. So we got to watch out for that. That's why we're here sitting talking about it. It has a diverse economy, got a large consumer base, over 1 billion people there, and it's young and a vibrant workforce, low cost labor there. And so it presents a world of opportunities. And so let me some of the topics we're going to kind of cover today. is the economic transformation from a developing nation to a global player. Some key factors in driving the growth. A sectoral analysis exploring India's thriving industries, which ones are thriving, what's coming, what we got to watch for. Which I guess if we're looking at that, if you're in the U.S., we're going to be, if they're thriving, we have to compete with that. So we have to watch. They're a lower cost player, so we can outsource some of our lower cost things to those types of environments. Then also the foreign direct investment in India, some of the trends and opportunities that exist in that. The infrastructure development, which is fueling India's economic expansion. And again, they're the largest democracy, so they're kind of along that. It's not a centralized planning thing. It's more of a free market. I don't know how much of the free market versus, again, we're kind of facing that here in the United States too. How much is really truly free market versus planned central economies, but that blend. Innovation and entrepreneurship in India. And I know we've got a couple of that particular one. When we get to it, we can talk about it a little bit. We're kind of familiar with that and have met many of the entrepreneurs in India and very happy with the development there and what's been going on. Then we'll look at some of the challenges and roadblocks that are addressing some of the paths of hurdles to growth. And then a demographic dividend. Harnessing the power of a young workforce. That'll be a good topic, I think. That's it. Not an aging workforce, but a young workforce. How are their international trade relations? We've faced that a little bit. Some of the tariffs and stuff we see in some of the other markets, how we have trade relations there. And then I don't know. Again, we're here to talk and some future outlooks, predictions, and forecasts. We do not have a crystal ball, but we can talk about what we think and what we've been going on. And that'll probably be incorporated in a lot of the other topics as you talk about them. So it's really difficult to necessarily specifically have a crystal ball outlook.
Yeah,
and all that stuff.
one of the things, Jim, is this is something that's been developing for a long time. It's not something that just happened overnight. This is something that's going to continue to grow, and we have no idea what the outcome is going to be. But obviously, when you're talking over 1 billion people, and the power that they're at right now, or the powers and all the development that they have going on, it's going to be something that's going to be interesting to watch in the future because they are going to be a factor in the world market in many different aspects.
Yeah, and it's we're in the steel business, and that's where our focus is at. So that's we have a tendency to look specifically at that, but not the automotive. I don't see a lot of Indian Tata made cars here in the United States yet. With the Chinese and the Japanese, the Asian markets certainly have a thing in that, but I guess
I mean that's also where the investment part of things come into play, and the market to sell automobiles to a younger aging population. The young people growing up, they're going to need cars. I mean, it's a huge market. People are going to be looking at investing in as well.
Exactly. So just keep an eye out for that. So the first one is from a developing nation to a global player. When we look at the economic transformation, it's been fueled by some factors like liberalization, reforms, and advancements in technology. So I think that's the young labor force see that in the we've seen that for years. I think in the technology side of things with the what would you call it? The tech support that has we used to do a lot of that here in the United States, and I think when you dial an 800 number now, it's routed. A lot of those calls go overseas. A lot of them to India.
Yeah, that's been going on for quite some time. Yep.
Yeah, I guess we go back in the 90s with some of our software, and I remember the days when you bought a piece of software. It wasn't rented to you on a monthly basis. You actually bought it, and then they had tech support with it for a year or whatever, and you'd call their 800 number and you'd get answered by the headquarters here in the US, and they'd work with you on solving that problem.
Right.
but
Well, I mean, that goes along with the labor rates as well. I mean,
right.
you know, in the world market that we're in, they certainly are an up and coming factor there. You know, the labor rates, they're less in that part of the world, but that's going to be something, a hurdle that they're going to have to jump in the future is to, you know, get caught up in that area.
Yeah, for some reason, I
So,
think if we talk about this, I don't know. I think, you're starting to see that with the changes of the caste system and it's becoming more of a, we see that here though. We fight that every day here that the rich are getting richer and, the one percenters and, there's Wall Street movements and there's all the things that go on. So, but it's, is it a shrinking middle class? Is it a growing middle class? And I think over there, it's definitely still, it's in the growing middle class area where, people are moving up through the system and growing their.
I would agree with that. There's a lot of room for growth there. Sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, they certainly have had but again, we've talked to people that we've seen them, people that have overcome, uh, you know, uh, problems in their family life or whatever, and they've gone and they've had a lot and they've lost a lot and they've gotten started to get it back.
Right. Right.
Just it's again, I don't know if it's the Indian dream or the American dream or the world dream but I certainly guess it's a dream of a lot of folks is to.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm not real privy to is the government policies that exist over there. You know, and I don't know. I just imagine, you know, in the United States where we have what is it, 350 million or something, 340, 350 million people in this country, and our government does what they do to try and regulate and govern this this country. I just imagine with over 1 billion people in a country and a government having to govern that. I don't know. That's quite a task. It is quite a task.
Yeah, well, that's another topic, how you run your countries.
But it certainly is another topic, but is something that they certainly are focusing on. I'm sure.
Yeah, and as it says, their GDP growth has been growing. I don't know what their rates are. We haven't looked at that for a while, but it certainly has grown, and the status has grown in the International Trade and Finance Department. So that's kind of the first topic there is from the developing nation to a global player. So
Mhm.
the second topic here is key factors. We've kind of covered a few of those. Economic growth, a large and growing consumer market,
Yes.
favorable demographics, the young and the old, they'll get some good favorable demographics in that. Domestic demand is growing, people are more confident, there's more money to be spent, and the government driven initiatives that have, caused a lot of that stuff to happen. Which, some of the notes we have here too, it's the rise of the middle class. So we're
Yes.
saying it's a growing middle class. The urbanization, so you got building and there's a lot of stuff that we saw probably in the 50s, 60s here. The urbanization moving from the cities, out to the suburbs.
Right. Right. And
Um,
yeah, along with that, I think the uh, the infrastructure for all of that as it grows,
right.
it's huge.
That's definitely helpful in the economic growth there.
Sure.
Um, so the third one here is exploring India's thriving industries. And I know some of the industries that kind of covered and were brought, as we did our research here, the IT services, going back to that, that's growing and that's been favorable for them.
Sure.
Manufacturing, and that's some of the stuff we've talked about, some of the items that we're selling in the steel. I don't even know that what 20 years ago we would have considered. And there's some of the product lines importing any of that stuff from India. However, now they're growing. They've been growing in the domestic market down there, and we've seen that where they now have enough domestic capacity, and they can then start using some of that extra capacity to start exporting to other markets. When we've heard, European markets have been a big one for them, and I think now we've
Yes.
seen some of the product lines where they're starting to have enough capacity where they can export to the U.S.
Right. Right. And their quality is certainly getting much better as well. You know, with that growth. and the understanding of what needs to be supplied to the market.
Right. And then the other part is the policies and initiatives by the, Indian government have been promoting growth. So that's another
Yes.
thing. There's their investments, and looking for the foreign direct, which is the third next topic, is the foreign direct investment. Because of the stability of the government and the relationships with foreign countries, there has been definitely a surge in FDI. And the factors of the market potential that's there, the policy reforms that have been going on in the government, and the ease of doing business. It's gotten a lot easier to do business, probably not as many regulations and roadblocks and stuff for foreign countries, foreign companies to make their investments in the Indian markets.
Right.
So let's see, manufacturing services, infrastructure. Those are the two big ones, I think, for the growing market and for foreign direct investment. Yeah, the next one is the infrastructure development. Again, we've kind of gone over that. That's the way, because of the growing population, well, not necessarily population, but I imagine it's growing as well, but the urbanization. So you're moving out of the cities and you need the roads and the houses and the supermarkets and the repair shops and all that stuff, and you're starting to work. You need dry cleaners and restaurants and
the whole gamut for sure. That's and with that many people, that's a huge opportunity for growth.
but it also creates problem of logistics and stuff like that as well. How do people get from one place to another with that many people and that big of a thing? And where are the jobs?
Yeah.
So and they have to connect the urban and the rural areas, which that's something else as well. I know that's going back into the 50s and some of the things we used to do around here for the Eisenhower interstate highway bills and the making sure that the urban areas got telephone lines and communications and
Right, and I would assume, and I don't know any specifics about this, but if anybody else out there has any knowledge of this, we'd love to hear from you. But the mass transit has to be a huge part of that whole um, uh, urbanization plan, I would assume, with that many people. Not everybody's going to own a car. And if they do, that's going to change things dramatically.
once again, that's
pollution wise and just the road system and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of people.
yeah, but you also, I mean, that mass, you say mass transit. I know that's an issue in many different cities. I know, when you take the top 3 cities in the United States, and you got New York, which has been subway system, and they got their mass transit system down. You got LA, which has no mass transit. They have very, very little. The buses, I guess, from a little bit, but they're so spread out and sprawling, and people don't have the routes, and there really isn't a big mass transit system. It's just full straight concrete for roads, and 8-lane highways intersecting just about every couple miles. In that LA basin.
Houston doesn't have much of a mass transit system either.
People have been in the cars down here since the beginning of time, and I know bus lines will come out from downtown, to the west or whatever, but then they just end, right at a certain spot. So there's nothing to get people out any further. So if you're on a bus line, you're going to be ending up at a you're going to be restricted in your movement, is really what I'm saying, I guess.
Sure.
You can't get any further out. They just haven't got that far. You got to have the car.
Right.
To do that.
We'll see how it develops. That's a lot of people to move around, and I'm sure that's a factor that they've considered.
Yeah, each city has their own things to do. One of the next one here is the entrepreneurship and innovation. And this is something we've experienced. We've had several folks from India, entrepreneurs that have really led and grown, got the done some IPOs with their businesses on their Indian stock exchange, and funded themselves and done gotten up and running and
been very successful. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which creates a lot of employment opportunities, and I think we're seeing that a lot too. Is the employment opportunities we've seen from there too. one of the guys we talked to, his, the length of time for the employment there's like a long time. I mean, he's bought a company that's been around for a long time, and their employees are there, and they take care of the employees, and the employees do a good job for him.
Yes, they do. I mean, a lifetime. I mean, they take care of people for their life. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the government is trying to sponsor and innovations and have entrepreneurial drive fostered within their growth or economic growth, or they're really trying to do that. So they're trying to get the startups and technological investments going. So that's, I mean, it's a strong market.
Yes, indeed.
So when we kind of discuss the challenges and the roadblocks, what are some of the challenges? I think one of the big ones that we researched out was income inequality. You still have that, the rich are rich, and then the middle class, but again, it's growing, so it is still a
Yes.
challenge. So you have to overcome that.
Right, and I think the government will come into play in a lot of that. I don't know if it will or not, or if just the free market will let that work itself out.
Yeah. Then you also have the next one here, which is the skilled labor shortages. Skilled labor shortages. Again, colleges, education, trade laborers, trade union, trade, not the union necessarily, but trade schools, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Do they promoting that? I guess they have to grow. You have to build those. You have to monitor them. You have to, and it just doesn't happen overnight.
Right, and developing an education system. I don't know what their education system is in India right now, but I would assume that that's something that they're taking a close look at too, to get that skilled labor improved.
Right. You keep on. That's
Yeah.
why you have the education system, regardless whether it's skilled in a machine tooling or whether it's a
Education in general,
mechanic
right?
for airplanes. You have to have the mechanic and you have to train him. You can't just buy an airplane and expect it to run. You have to have the labor to, make that
Yeah.
airport, all the things in the airport run.
Yes, indeed.
Um, let's see. So some demographic dividend. Right now, I think what they're saying is there's such a young workforce, and it is a younger population. And again, we all face that, the aging population like we see in the United States, but the young population that's there in India right now, they're eager. They work a little harder for less money, but they can be trained easier in different things. They have teach old dogs new tricks. It's teach the young
But
dogs.
yeah, plus they're being brought up in a an age of technology that allows them to grow at a faster pace than we did when we were kids.
Right, which goes back to what we've already talked about a little bit. It requires an investment in education, the skills development, and job,
Sure.
the
Mhm.
equipment to find these youth to make the necessary knowledge and capabilities for the specific job markets.
Yes. Yes.
Let's see. In the last, before we get to the predictions, the trade relations, with the key global players, I know that the BRICS, they're lined up with the BRICS folks, and they've got they have, I don't know if they kind of lined up with them or not, but um, they've they've certainly done trade. I know one of the things we talked about in the steel business the other day was they're putting tariffs on Chinese finished goods steel, which is kind of amazing to me, that how the Indian market, they're known for lower cost, and how China then can get in and supply material to India. But what they were trying to do, I think, how much of that's trading dollars and currencies. I think we talked about that a little bit about last week. We had our challenges in the metals business and how to overcome them, what the challenges were and are. And one of them was exactly that: currency fluctuations, currency manipulations, environmental problems, and certain, restrictions on all that stuff.
Mhm.
Again, we're not talking about
Well,
that.
it certainly is representative of the fact that they are a growing factor in the world market that we live in.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're diversifying their export services and becoming increasingly powerful in the global economic trade.
Sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
future outlook. Apparently, it remains positive. Forecasts are suggesting continued growth with factors such as technological advancements and reforms and domestic consumption there growing. So I think that all looks good for them for quite some time. Thereby, we have to kind of watch that and use that, work with them where we can here, and again, use it when it's a lower cost thing from somewhere else or here. Let's take advantage of it.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
we do live in that world market. I mean, it's changed a lot since the beginning of our careers. It's a smaller world, so to speak, and they will be a big factor in that whole world market that we live in.
Keep our eyes and ears open for that. I think, one of the things, we've talked about here recently was going to some trade shows. Some of the trade shows that have been in the steel business over the years, there has not been a lot of Indian suppliers in those trade shows. And a couple of the trade shows we've talked about attending this year, they're actually going to be displaying in some of the large world market displays. So, it's growing. It's especially in the steel. And I don't know where else, but I mean, in the steel business for sure.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And there's a lot more of them that are going to be participating in that. Yeah, than in the past, for sure.
All right. Well, kind of wraps up today's Indian discussion. I don't see any notes here or any. Let me just double check the nothing in the Zoom interactive.
Well, while you're checking that, Jim, I just say, thank you for anybody who's joined in, and we'd love you to share this with other people, and certainly like us, and share, join us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Check out our YouTube page and subscribe to it, and help grow the community that we're trying to develop here, because we want to generate a platform where we can all get together and kind of talk about these type of topics. And what's the one for next week, Jim? It's
work-life balance.
Work-life balance. Yeah, that's a good one. I know it's been a challenge for me in my life, but hopefully we can hear some of the comments out there on what other people think about that and how they've overcome some of the complications in that.
Look forward to talking about that one next week, doing a little research, figuring it out, and again, making progress in our own lives. In addition to that, just wanted to also it's a little teaser here. We've got something that we're working on, and we're getting, it's getting closer and closer, of course, just time passing, but how fast we can get to it, it just depends on, what else is going on in the world. But we are trying to get together where we can set up a more of this type of interactive discussion in a platform that's suitable for these and other topics for discussion and conversation on a regular basis. So we can put together everybody in one spot and let people grow. And again, Scott and I are at the backside of our career. We've seen more yesterdays than we're going to see tomorrow's. So we're trying to figure out, after being third generation in the steel business here, how we can do a little bit giving back. So how we can figure out giving back. So if anybody has any ideas that, we're willing to do, it's not going to cost you anything. Just reach out to us, figure out what's going on. We'd love to hear from you.
And one thing that we're excited about as well, I think it's 2 weeks from now that we do have a live event that we're going to be putting on. This is live as well, but we're going to have a guest speaker on our show. So watch out for the announcements on that. I think that's 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks, the 8th, right? Correct.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, February 8th. My goodness.
Yeah, next week's February 1st. Our next one will be in February. This is our last live broadcast for January 2024.
Yeah. Okay.
Be hitting February 2024 here 1 week from today.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Time all right. Well, work-life balance is really important.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and hope to see you again next week.
Sounds great. And until next time, everybody.
All right. Checking out. See you later, everybody. Thank you.